Unless you've been stuck in a cave for the last few months, you'll have noticed a certain amount of hysterics in the media about the current financial crisis. A crisis judged so severe by the Taoiseach that he recently decided to back all the top Irish banks with 400 billion euros. That's nearly twice our annual GDP and €100,000 for every man, woman and child in the state. Money that wasn't available for our broken health system or our children's crumbling schools apparently. So what's the cause of all these alarms? It's a link to the gathering recession, and what does it bode for the future for ordinary workers and taxpayers? The official story is that the origins of the current crisis lie in the collapse of the US subprime mortgage market, i.e. poor people not paying their mortgages. Although this may have been the trigger event, it is not the real cause. The real cause lies in pyramids and not in houses. Specifically, the enormous debt pyramid built up by the Western countries, particularly those following the Anglo-Saxon economic model, which unfortunately for us includes Ireland. The financial framework constructed to support the globalization of trade and production has enabled the growth of a huge unregulated credit sector known as the shadow banking system, which has allowed the ballooning of credit not backed by any capital reserves. Now this system is collapsing, and banks are having to take the bad debts back onto their balance sheets. This means that most US and European banks are in danger of not having enough of the reserve cash required by law to back up the loans, many of them dodgy property loans. The result has been the biggest wave of nationalisations in the Western world since the aftermath of World War II. However, we are not nationalising railways, mines or manufacturers, but banks. Some blowhards in government and media have labelled this outbreak of nationalisations as a return to socialism. Nothing could be further from the truth. Here, the only thing that's being socialised is the risk and the losses, while the profits remain privatised. Socialism is about redistribution from the parasites to the producers, and not the other way round. Some commentators on the Paulson plan's $700 billion bailout have noted that the figure almost exactly matches the amount the US has spent on its wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, but only in passing, as a coincidence. In fact, there is an indirect connection here. After the tech bubble burst and 9/11, then Fed Secretary Alan Greenspan lowered the dollar interest rates right down below 2% to prevent a crash. He then kept interest rates very low, right through to 2004, dropping down to 1% just after the US invasion of Iraq. It was this ultra-low rate, in part motivated by the need to provide cheap money to fund the Iraq adventure, which contributed to the growth of the property bubble. In the American neocons' original plan, the Iraq adventure was supposed to pay for itself with seized Iraqi oil. Now it looks like the US taxpayer will have to pick up the bill, but they will not be the only ones to pay. As the collapse of this debt pyramid drags us into a global recession, we will all end up paying. Raw capitalism is a dead end, US Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson now says. The political and business establishment are suddenly agreed that government intervention and regulation are not only a good thing, but a vital necessity. Well, they've sure changed their tune. These are the very same people who've been bashing us over the head since the 1970s with the neoliberal dogmas that regulation is bad, that markets can look after themselves far better without government interference. The whole neoliberal catechism is now in shreds, so we will not be going back to the way things were before this crisis. Nor will we be going back to the way things were before neoliberalism. Globalization has meant the shift of industrial power to the east. China is now the workshop of the world. With its failure to seize control of the world's oil reserves, US power to continue to dictate the terms of trade in the global economy is waning. What's next? Capitalism is no stranger to crises. In many ways, crises are seen as an opportunity to overcome obstacles to profitability that tradition or popular resistance have established over time. The capitalist solution to the crises they create is always to try and make the workers pay. In concrete terms, this means an all-out assault on wages through the rotten partnership process, and further assaults on public services like health, education and public transport. Our response must be to fight back, and not let them saddle us with the bill for their screw-ups. video you're watching is of the Irish National Teacher Organisation organised demonstration against the cuts in education that happened in Dublin December 6th, 2008. The words you just heard are from the article Crises, What Crisis? That can be found in Workers' Solidarity 106. Workers' Solidarity is a publication of the Workers' Solidarity movement. You'll find out more about the Workers' Solidarity movement at their webpage at www.wsm.ie. If you go to that page, you'll find a link to our YouTube video account and to our accounts on Google Video, where you'll find additional videos like these that show footage of protests in Dublin and also talks that are based on the crash and why it is happening now.
Education. Currently, the corrupt field will fund 24% of Norway's education. Ireland's oil and gas reserves are worth in excess of €450 billion. Equal